So there's a lot of talk about Texas and what exactly is going to happen to it. The prevailing theory is, of course, that we are heading towards making it into a Atlanta pseudo superspeedway. And while I personally would prefer that over what we currently have at Texas, I can't ignore the obvious flaws in the plan. We don't know exactly what Atlanta will be like 5 years from now, and we don't know if this pack racing that they've developed there is going to remain the same once the track wears out, or if, it's going to turn into something so boring we can't even contemplate right now. But one thing that I am noticing is for sure is that the overwhelming chagrin of the NASCAR fan base will probably be the best thing that could deter NASCAR from doing this. I think that NASCAR is genuinely confused because the data and TV ratings point towards Daytona and Talladega having some of our biggest events. However, there is a significant portion of the fan base, if you go on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, wherever you want to check for any tidbits from fans, there's been a very vocal portion of it that do not enjoy superspeedway racing. They attribute their reasons to the carnage and luck-based racing that always is prevalent when we go to these types of tracks. And we also have drivers who are very much vocal about their displeasure for this type of racing because of the danger it presents. Of course, Joey Logano has been the most vocal about getting rid of superspeedway racing, which thankfully, I don't think that what I feel is his constant attack to try and get rid of it altogether. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but his just constant berating of it would lead me to believe that. But I don't think that will ever be the case. But I do worry about what exactly the future holds for superspeedway racings with the current temperature of the fan base and drivers. While I can agree with we need to stop the spread of creating more superspeedways, 2 dates at Daytona and Talladega should always be the norm. Joey Logano is a really interesting case because, when it comes to his constant berating of superspeedway tracks, just to be very blunt, he's a bit of a hypocrite with it. Logano calls out the carnage in the wrecks, but that really just comes with that type of racing, but he seems to forget all the receipts that can be led back to him being the main catalyst for a lot of these wrecks at Daytona and Talladega through the years. He also called it not real racing, and that most people who finish well run in the back all day and end up with top 10s, referring to teams like Rick Ware Racing that pulled out a top 10 at the Coca-Cola 400 like a couple weeks ago. I personally disagree. I think that these tracks help equalize equipment, and that leads to a race of attrition. And with the attrition, there's a lot of strategy that plays into it. Teams have to decide whether to be aggressive and go for stage points or stay in the back and just be there at the end. Strategy is a factor in every race. Just because you don't personally like the strategy that comes into play with this racing doesn't mean that it's not real racing. And I'm not saying that he or a fan is wrong if they don't like that style of racing. It's just not your cup of tea. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that if you're the type wanting to get rid of superspeedway racing, you really should just move on to F1 or IndyCar, because Daytona and Talladega are staples of this sport, NASCAR. And to be fair, most of the detractors of superspeedways really are just advocating not to add more to the schedule, like making Texas one. And I can definitely see that point of view and agree with it. But there are drivers and fans like Logano who think that maybe Daytona 500 should be our sole superspeedway race. And even then, I think they'd prefer to change the rules package to keep it from being pack racing, to keep it from being as dangerous. And to once again be very blunt, if anyone actually wants to do this, it's incredibly short-sighted and not a very good idea all the way around. If you took pack racing away from superspeedways, they would race pretty much like the mile-and-a-half tracks that we have now. And imagine that on a track nearly double the size. They would just be completely boring, and it would take away any of the luster that these races had to begin with. We have the most diverse schedule in all of motorsports with 1.5 mile ovals, short tracks, road courses, and super speedways. That is what makes NASCAR so unique. And to get rid of it would be a detriment to what makes NASCAR unique. But it would also dull a lot of what keeps NASCAR relevant in pop culture. You can hate it if you want, but these races are consistently our most watched events. Yes, wrecks are part of it. But you could be like me and genuinely just enjoy that style of racing for the equalization of all the equipment that gives every driver a fair chance, the strategy that plays out amongst the drivers, who plays it safe, who attacks early, and most importantly, it's 9 times out of 10 an amazing finish. I personally don't understand why the fan base has just done a complete 180 over the years to turn on superspeedway racing. I personally have a theory that it turned once Dale Jr. was no longer part of the sport. And since he was always a threat to win, it gave the majority of NASCAR fans that were his fans, that rooted for him, a reason to like them. Since he retired, the new fan favorite Chase Elliott, while a decent superspeedway racer with a win at Talladega under his belt, he's far from as prolific as Dale Jr. was at superspeedway racings. And I always just found it a weird coincidence that when Dale Jr. retired, fan appreciation for superspeedways dwindled, and once Chase Elliott began dominating road courses, all of a sudden fan support for road courses rose. I still think that's just a pretty interesting coincidence, but I'm sure there are genuine fans that never really cared for it to begin with. I also think this big 180 by the fans has a lot to do with drivers being more vocal about it, and they're kind of just piggybacking off the driver's concerns. I mean, if you're a Joey Logano fan, you're gonna like the tracks that he likes, and you're gonna hate the ones that he doesn't. But I'm sorry, while I think the current car's safety concerns do add an extra layer of worry that does not need to be there, this sport has always been dangerous whenever it came to any types of tracks, not just Daytona and Talladega. And please do not misconstrue my words. I 100% would rather watch this sport fold and we never race another day than see a man or woman die. But everyone in this sport should be aware of the dangers of motor racing. We shouldn't ignore safety issues by any means, which is why I sympathize with most drivers' concerns this year. But drivers like Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick have been on this warpath for years. And at a certain point, I just have to ask, what did they expect to happen? What is their end game here? If they're too scared to race at super speedways, there are plenty of young drivers across America that their dream is to race in NASCAR and would gladly take their dream job and the fat paycheck that comes with it. And I'm not just trying to be one of these people that just says shut up and drive. They very much should always voice their opinion. They have that platform to do so. But at a certain point, if you hate it that bad and it's just a constant, it's just became part of your narrative at this point, there are just so many other forms of motorsports that you could go to. I don't mean to keep picking on Joey. He's just a good example to use for a lot of this. I mean, do you think that Joey Logano could walk into Roger Penske's office tomorrow and say, I'm done with NASCAR, put me in an IndyCar? And do you think Roger Penske wouldn't do it? I mean, it's like there are other options if this is that much of a concern to you. Because personally, me, I used to race. I definitely didn't race at this level. I used to race go-karts. And I mean, I remember flipping my go-kart. And I didn't have a roll cage. I didn't have anything. I wasn't going as fast as cars, like stock cars and stuff do. But still, I knew the risks getting into it. I was a kid and flipped a go-kart. It was scary, but I went back and did it later that day because I think that was just a qualifying race. It's whenever it's what you love, it's just what you do. And personally, I guess maybe that's why I also have a harder time finding a lot of sympathy. But like I said, I do understand the concerns with this next-gen car this year. I'm a lot more sympathetic, but this has kind of been going on for a while now. And I just think it's interesting. Like I said, I understand not wanting to change Texas and Atlanta to pack races. But can we keep our hate in check when it comes to Daytona and Talladega? I I don't know. I just really think that the day that Daytona and Talladega are either their races are cut down, or the pack racing is gone, or God forbid that those tracks are taken off the schedule, I think that that's the day that NASCAR might truly be in danger of dying. But my rant is over. If you think Superspeedway should be extinct, tell me about it in the comments, and let's have a discussion. I think you're wrong, but you're welcome to type my ear off over it. But thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe and follow me on Twitter and TikTok, and I hope you all have a great day.